turn that down. Yeah, let's watch some silly YouTube videos. Well, silly cartoons. This is the very, very first Juan C video that they ever published, apparently. Let's go over there. Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, I didn't really have much else prepared for tonight, though, so let's do this for a little while. And then maybe we'll play some Dredge. What's happening? No sound.
There was an entrance to an elevator.
Here we go.
I am in my mid-40s. This is what
the guy from the profile
40
picture.
Years ago. One day, I visited one of my friends at his apartment, which was very old and shabby. There was an entrance to an elevator in the center
just like Family Guy.
I can't remember well, but my friend lived in unit 701 or 801 on the 7th or 8th floor.
Yeah, I remember downloading like the
IMDb
top 50 like movie torrent like years ago.
On the far left end. One summer
it's like The Godfather, stuff like that.
He was alone and didn't have any plans.
Seven Samurai.
So we called two of our friends and had a drinking party. The four of us had been drinking since the early evening, and just before passing out, we all
that was
lied
like
on
20
the
years
floor,
ago.
Turned the lights off and started talking. While talking to each other, a beam of street light entered through the window and was shining on the ceiling. I guess the street lights on the first floor of the apartment complex were on. Of course, we were talking while gazing at the ceiling. All of a
Does he
sudden,
sound like he's 80?
The white ceiling turned black.
He's got Benjamin Button
as if
disease.
Something covered up the light. At that moment, we looked out the window while crouching down. Someone with a creepy vibe was hanging on a steel bar outside the window. Since the light was shining from behind that person, we could not see his face clearly. Then, after making an unidentifiable gesture, he smiled, showing his white teeth without making a sound. We were so shocked at that moment that we stopped talking and were frozen with silence.
Oh, that guy's for it.
Suddenly, one of us picked up an empty bottle of wine and ran toward the window shouting, "Kill that bastard!" But the creepy guy had disappeared. After a few minutes, we went out of the apartment to
Kill
see
that
where he
bastard!
had gone, but we could not find him. We could only hear his stomping footsteps and assumed he entered the corridor and went down the stairs. Going down the stairs is the only way that stomping sound could be made. It sounded like he descended to the first floor and was walking around, so we followed down the stairs looking for him, but quickly returned to the apartment, still filled with fear. At first, we thought it must have been a robber or some crazy guy laughing in front of the window. But when we came back to our friends'
their other
house,
friends, like, what's happening?
We were all shocked. The distance between the end of the corridor and the window of our friend's apartment was too long for someone hanging onto the steel window bar to jump across.
But they live in a fucking jail?
Person would try and fall to their death.
Now, though, to be fair, I live in an area now where people do put bars on their windows to be safe.
Someone had committed suicide by jumping from the roof of the apartment.
Usually not like the second floor, though.
Falling. So we went down to the first floor to see if a body was there, but there wasn't a single trace.
What? He's got a tail?
After that experience, I never visited his house again.
Damn. So it's just the story of a man hanging outside his house? I hate that YouTube won't keep your spot if you like scroll all the way to the bottom of a channel's videos. They gotta like another window. Yeah.
I was on summer break and went camping with my friend and his parents. We went to the lake during the day and did
Hell
the
yeah.
s'mores thing at night. His parents shared a tent while my friend and I had our own. I can't remember where the
The
campsite
s'mores
was,
thing.
and I'm not really in contact with my friend anymore. But 15 years later, I'm assuming it wasn't the safest place to camp. Here's why. I woke up sometime in the early morning, like 3 or 4 a.m., and immediately saw a man's face looking in the tent at us. He
Whoa.
had unzipped the door just enough to stick his head inside. He looked absolutely insane. He had big eyes and wild hair. I was so stiff from fear, I literally couldn't do anything. The man kept
s'mores
moving
thing.
his head from left to right, very, very slowly, as if it was uncontrollable. I guess my friend could hear me breathing loudly or something, because he woke up too. He had the same reaction as me, and just laid there in terror, looking at this mysterious man. I'm not certain how long he was sitting there looking at us, but it felt like hours.
The most
shaking
animated
his
thing in the
head
entire
back and
cartoon.
forth. At
This
some
guy's
point,
mouth.
we heard a noise close by, and so did the man. He disappeared quick, and a couple minutes later we got out of our tent and woke up his parents. The guy was
His dad's got
long
a sick
gone.
mustache.
I'm still afraid of camping to this day.
Damn. Crazy. There we get some pizza.
I work at a pizza joint in Chicago, and
His
I
audio is
unfortunately have the shitty responsibility of delivering
Unfortunately.
pizzas, usually on the weekends, and usually at night. I've asked my boss for day shifts, but she seems to ignore my requests and give me whatever
Fuck is
shifts
his
I
boss?
don't want the most. I know being a pizza delivery man is somewhat of a dangerous job, but I never imagined anything like what happened to me a few months ago
His hair
could
is pretty
actually
sick,
happen.
man.
There is this one customer that always calls in and acts strange as hell on the phone. Sometimes he will just hang up on you. Sometimes he'll order pizzas normally, but make crazy sounds while he does, and then hang up. We've always thought this guy was just an idiot playing pranks. He would make really weird comments too, like, "I want to order a large pizza with pineapples, mustard, and your skin." I'll never forget that
I remember
one.
this now.
We usually just hang up on his
and
ass
your
now,
skin.
and we always know it's him calling because his number
Dude,
is saved in our system.
His number is
So he called
it's
again
just
a few months
counting
ago
up.
and ordered a pizza normally. No bullshit, no weird comments or sounds, and gave his address too.
Like, wouldn't that be
I thought
fucking
it would
weird
be
too?
interesting to finally deliver to this guy, and when I drove up to his house, it was something you'd see in a scary movie. An old as hell looking place right on the line where we don't deliver.
Old
Not
as
in
hell.
the busy part of the city where most of our orders come in. The house looked like it was about 100 years old, and there were no lights on that I could see. I wasn't scared or anything, just
Also,
looking forward to seeing what he
Leno,
looked like. When
I
I
just
went
saw that
to
you
the front
subbed
door,
18
I
minutes
rang
ago.
the bell, but it wasn't working, so I knocked.
Sorry, I
I
missed that. Thank you
realized
for
I
the 11
forgot the
months.
guy's soda, and thought he'd give me shit for sure. Or just freak out on me.
Appreciate it.
Nobody answered right away, so I knocked again on this big door. He opened
Knocked
up
again.
after that second time. He was wearing this weird-looking mask around his mouth. Only his mouth. His eyes were opened wide, and I told him how much the pizza was, and that I was sorry I forgot the drink. He looked down, I think, and then said, "It's okay,"
Dude, what the
and then
fuck?
looked at me again.
They
I
always
stood
do
there
that.
looking at him for like 5 seconds in silence when I got bored of his shit and told him the amount again. He said okay, and then asked me, "Has anyone ever attacked me before?" I told him no, and if they did, they'd be sorry. He then took off his mask that was covering his mouth, and he had big-ass scars all around his mouth. I have no idea what they were from, and can't even imagine what they might have been from, but he
Damn.
looked seriously messed up. He smiled at me, and his lips were all cracked. I noticed he wasn't about to hand me some money, so I told him I was leaving. I turned around and started walking down the steps, and he screamed at me and slammed the door. This bastard was crazy, and I don't think any of his shit was to be funny. That final scream he gave me was creepy as hell, even though I kind of
That's how you got
expected him
those
to do
scars,
something
though.
like that.
Sharp
He
pizza.
has called several times since then, and we always just tell him now that he is on our no delivery list. He usually just screams and hangs up, or cusses out
Damn.
whoever is
It's
on
the same
phone.
guy. Sharp pizza. It's a pretty good one.
About 10 years ago, my 3-year-old son and I moved to a house from our apartment.
Sharp hamburger.
It was a very old building, and the inside of the house always seemed to be just a little darker.
I love
Maybe
this
just a little
narrator.
colder than it should have been. Not long after we moved in, a friend of mine came to visit. The whole time we were sitting and talking, she seemed very uncomfortable. When I looked at her face, I noticed that something in the other room had caught her attention. Her
This
eyes
guy was in one of the
grew
other
wide,
cartoons.
and she said, "I have to go." I asked her what was wrong.
She looks like
But
what's
she
her name from
refused to
that cartoon or
Her
that
odd reaction was
comic.
freaking me out, so I kept after her.
I can't remember the name of.
On her way out the door, she finally blurted out,
Just
"This
the
house
hair, I
is
guess.
haunted." But she wouldn't
She
tell me
knew.
what it was or what made her think so. To this day, she still refuses to tell me what she saw. About a week later, my 3-year-old son casually asked me who the old lady in the bathroom was. One day, I was leaving my house for work.
How come this
and I
kid
got
has
to the
no
car and
eyes?
I realized I needed
like
to
no
run back
soul.
in the house to get something.
Just gets a dot for an
I
eye.
walked into the house, and as soon as I got inside, this framed photo on the wall shot off the wall.
Is that a massage table?
It didn't fall down. It shot horizontally away from the wall, and it landed on a mosaic table with enough force to break some of the tiles off of it. I felt like
Wait.
whatever
Did the
was in-
narrator say mosaic table, but that was a massage table? Is that just like a just like a miscommunication? Mosaic.
off of it. I felt like whatever was in the house was pissed, and that I came back in after it thought I had came back in. Whatever was in the house was pissed, and that I came back in after the wall.
Damn it! Say it
And
again.
it landed on a mosaic table with enough
I'm pretty sure he said mosaic, but it's definitely just a massage
force
table.
to
That's
break
fine.
some of the tiles
Well,
off
what
of
the
it.
fuck is a
I
mosaic
felt
table?
like
That doesn't make any
whatever
sense.
was in the house was pissed, and that I came back in after
I guess
it
you could
thought I
get a
had left
mosaic
for the
table.
day. After living in the house for about 6 months, I noticed a
It's
weird
a
square
massage
cut into
table.
the boards on the deck. There was no handle, but I was able to pry it up. The hole was just big enough to fit through, and there was a ladder going down. For some reason, I went down and I found myself in what looked like a homemade basement. It was basically just a room dug out of the earth, with
Did you
no
really go down
constructive
there?
walls or stone supports or anything like that. It was very dark, but I could see something over in the corner. It was a suspicious looking stone. It looked like one of those old headstones you see in cemeteries. Just then,
A
some
gravestone?
insects started jumping on me.
All of a
So
sudden,
I
there
got
was
out of the
fucking
basement
bees
as fast
down
as I
there.
could and never went back. Now this is the part that affected me the most. It's also the reason we left the house. One night I was in bed laying on
Sounds
my
like a
stomach
story
just
that
about
someone
to
would
fall
tell you, like
asleep.
on the bus
And I
going
heard
to
someone
school when
walk
you're in
into
like
my
4th
room.
grade.
The footsteps came from the doorway over to my bed. I didn't realize until later that
I
the
never
fact
went
that
back
I
down
heard
there.
the footsteps was weird because the room was carpeted. When the footsteps
Oh,
reached
yeah, of
my
course.
bed, I felt someone put their hands on my back. 2 hands, just gently laid flat on my back and kept me there. I assumed
Gently?
it was my son. "What are you doing?"
His
I
son's
asked.
just holding you down
But
in
there was
bed.
no answer. I looked up. No one was there. I got up and checked my son's bedroom, and he was in bed fast asleep. We moved out soon after that. And we
My
never
bed
looked
became the
back.
massage table. All of a sudden, I was getting a massage, and I was on the table. Dude, these are ending too quick. There's not enough like credits at the end. Not getting enough time. It broke on the mosaic table. First of all, if it was a massage table, wouldn't that like cushion the fall of whatever fell on it? Probably. Some of these are just like bizarre. I don't even want to watch them. Right? To like not watch the insanely insane ones, but some of them are just can't tell.
This unforgettable incident happened 6 years ago when I was 15.
It looks like the kid. It looks like the kid from the middle. You know what I'm talking about? The little kid in the middle with like the fucking giant head.
Years old. I live in the Maldives, which is a small atoll of islands on the Indian Ocean. During the holidays, my family decided to go to an uninhabited island for a picnic. I was really
We decided to
excited
go to
about
an
it.
uninhabited island.
Almost every Maldivian goes to picnics like this, so it was not the first time we went to do this. We went with a group of 16 people, 5 of my older brothers, including my mom and dad, and the rest were my friends and their parents. When we arrived on the island, I had a
That'd be
really
kinda
weird
fucking
feeling
sick.
at first. However, I soon shrugged it off, thinking that nothing bad was going to happen. But boy, was I
How rich do you have to be to
wrong.
just like roll up to islands
When I
on
started
boats?
to unpack my things, I kind of felt that someone was staring
Just hang
at
out
me
for
in
the day and
bushes.
leave.
But there was no one there when I looked at it. At this point, it creeped me out a little bit, but I didn't tell anybody though, because I thought they would make fun of me and I didn't want that. A few hours later, my friends and I were playing beach volleyball at the seashore, and that's when my mom yelled at us to come and help her. But to our surprise, there was a lady who was covered in blood when we got there. On top of that, there were abandoned houses around the area. I could see the woman was pointing out to a hut. She vanished
need
as
help?
soon as we went closer. What the heck? No one dared to
What
go
the heck,
inside,
man?
except my dad and my oldest brother. They eventually decided to go investigate, and what they saw in there was, it literally made my brother wet his pants. They jumped out from the hut and both shouted, "Get in the boat quickly!" We couldn't ask about it. All we knew that there was no time to waste at that moment. Although we couldn't pack all of our stuff, we had to escape anyway from this horrifying situation as soon as possible. All the people sat in the boat, and my dad started the boat and drove away. I then accidentally gazed at the island, and there was the same lady's figure standing on the seashore, smiling at us. And I could hear my
this?
best friend's
This right?
mom crying. She was
Scarecrow.
yelling and kept saying like this, "It took my husband."
Damn,
I
they
was
lost
terrified
people.
and really felt bad for my best friend at the same time, who was crying at the side of the boat.
What?
We finally got back to our island. And later that day, my dad and brother described what they had seen inside were as a demon-like figure, which had long
Whoa.
claws, sharp horns, and bloody red eyes with a skinny body.
So how many people did they lose?
After we reported to the authorities about the missing person, we also visited the church to see the priest. Father told us that we were
Looked
really
like a little
lucky that we
dragon.
got out of the devil's clutches. And he also said that it would have been fatal for everyone if we couldn't escape.
Oh yeah,
A
you
couple
all
of
would
weeks
have
later,
died.
we got informed by the police that they had found 13 dead bodies from the island.
Oh yeah, you all would have
including my
died.
best friend's dad. And to my surprise, they were found all skinned. From that day, I never go to any picnics on an uninhabited island. I don't want to know what's going on the island forever.
Okay. They just left some people out on that island. It's fucked up. All right, how about some other shit? We'll watch this video in a bit, Lizard. What is this, a scarecrow video? Oh, this animation looks weird. But like kind of cool. How was it like the 3D
It was
one?
wintertime, and Christmas was approaching. I was 25 years old, and I was going to meet up with some of my friends who lived on the other side of the city. It was a 4-hour drive from my place, so I decided to take my own car instead of a local cab. It was my first time going alone on such a long drive.
Sick hair though, right?
And I felt nervous, but excited. At midday, I packed my bags, threw them in
Dressed
the
like a
trunk,
Silent
and
Hill
went off to meet
protagonist.
my friends. It was a cold day, but the roads were clear. I didn't see much traffic as it was the holidays, and people would rather spend time with their families and friends indoors and stay off the roads.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not the type of person to go straight to my friend's house. I like to take my time.
I'm not
I'm
the
a
kind of
social
guy to
media
go
freak,
straight to
and I
my
enjoy
friend's
posting
house.
pictures pretty much all the time.
What the fuck?
So I found the journey an excellent excuse to post some extra pictures. The road I was taking had beautiful scenery.
Was that
and
him
the place
from
where my friends
Mob
lived
Psycho
was
at the
even
end?
more magical. I stopped a lot during my ride to take pictures. I was having a great time by myself. Well, that was until the weather suddenly changed. It was around 6 p.m., and I was still driving.
Yeah,
I
maybe
still
you
had a
shouldn't have
long
taken
way
your
ahead of
fucking
me.
time, huh?
And that's when it started to snow. Not just a dusting of snow, it was thick and heavy. After 15 minutes or so, the roads were already covered with a few feet of snow. I felt anxious since it was
What the
getting dark
fuck?
and I wasn't even halfway through the drive. My car slowed down and I had to force it to run on the empty roads. The heavy snow didn't stop. I decided that I would stop at the closest gas station I could find, but unfortunately,
Mountain gas
I couldn't
station.
find one for a while. An hour later, I finally saw some lights shining from the distance. It was a gas station. I pressed the accelerator, rushed to the station, parked my car, and went inside quickly.
Turned on a dime.
Just as I entered, a strong snowstorm started. The gas station had a little shop tucked away with some chairs to sit on. The guy at the counter was an ordinary fellow. He didn't really talk much. He only asked me where I was going in such harsh
Just an
weather.
ordinary guy.
After that, I bought some chips and drinks and sat down in the furthest chair from him. It was night now. I sat, munched on my food, and scrolled through an Instagram. Then, suddenly, the shop's door opened. I looked up, and a very weird-looking man entered. He had long, greasy hair, was wearing a long coat, and had a very grim expression. I saw him buy some cigarettes, and he sat down a few chairs away from me.
Everyone's
didn't
just
look
sitting
at
down in
me
the
at
gas
all.
station.
At first, I ignored him, but then he started smoking. Since the shop was small and the smoke filled the air quickly, the
Damn, this is
shopkeeper
an
told him
anime
to
now.
stop, but he didn't listen. He couldn't ask him to leave because of the storm, so he didn't say anything else. I, on the other hand, hated cigarettes. The weird guy was looking down, breathing very heavily as he
Damn,
spoke.
he just fucking
It was as if
puffing
he
that
was
shit down.
breathing in my ears. So when he took
Breathing
out
in
his
his
fifth
ears.
cigarette, I lost my temper and angrily told him to stop. He looked at me for a couple of minutes. His big eyes were red with anger. But then he smiled and stopped smoking. His smile was unnerving. I sat down again and distracted myself on my phone. Shortly afterwards,
Yeah,
my
I've seen
friend
enough
called
anime to know he's
asking
about to get
why
his
I
ass
hadn't reached
kicked.
their place yet. And I told him the whole story, and he said the storm would soon be over, and I shouldn't worry. When I hung up, I noticed the weird guy staring at my phone with deep interest. I was afraid that he was thinking of stealing it. But to my relief, after some time, he got up to leave. At the door, he stopped, looked back, and screamed loudly before running away, scaring the crap out of me and the shopkeeper. He didn't return after that. At 10:30 p.m., the storm ended, and I immediately left after thanking the shopkeeper. I went into my car, started it, and drove off. For some time, I drove in silence, but then
He's
heard
in
a
the
noise.
car, isn't he?
It sounded like heavy breathing. My heart rate shot up and my hands got all sweaty as the breathing sounded so familiar and so close. I looked through my rearview mirror and screamed.
I knew
The
it.
weird guy from the shop was sitting in my back seat.
He has like no
smiling
upper
at me.
head the
I
entire
pressed the
time.
brakes very hard, got out of the car and started running. I felt him running after me too, yelling at the top of his lungs. The road was empty, and I felt hopeless as I knew he was faster than me. I only looked back once to see him running like an unnatural being and holding a knife in his hand. I increased my pace, still wondering how on earth he got inside my car. I might have forgotten to lock the door when I first left to go to the gas station. But now,
Might have
it
forgot.
was too late for regret. My life was at risk because some psychopath was after me. Then I saw some headlights at a distance. I started waving my hands like a maniac, screaming for them to stop. They did, and it turned out to be my friend. He had come to pick me up as he was worried since I was pretty late and thought something went wrong.
Just so
I
happened
looked
to be
back,
him.
and I saw that guy was gone. I got inside my friend's car and told him everything.
Whoa.
He called the cops, and they arrived shortly after. We all went to my car first and noticed some marks made by a knife in the back seat. The cops couldn't find the guy anywhere. After some investigation, they let us leave. I drove my car, and my friend drove his car back to his place. The cops never found the guy. And to this day, I still wonder what would have happened.
He definitely
if
has
my
like
friend
survival
didn't turn up
horror
that night.
protagonist vibes. His outfit and stuff. Just a little bit. All right, let's watch this scarecrow one.
This happened to me just over a year ago at the end of last summer.
Audio
I had
just
just
quiet.
bought an abandoned house in the country. Things hadn't really worked out that well for me in the city, and if I'm being perfectly honest, I was too embarrassed to move back in with my parents. There was nothing particularly special about the house except for the fact that it was located in a very quiet and secluded area. Apparently, a young married couple used to occupy the house and for whatever reason had decided to vacate the property. It was definitely a fixer-upper, and there was no self.
It's like that picture of Homer just like looking out the window
I really
solemnly.
couldn't expect anything more for such a low price, and I was kind of excited about finally living a life off the grid, at least for a while. The second night at the house is when everything started. I was still having trouble sleeping. You know that feeling you get when you are trying.
Yeah, this is
to
a completely
relax in
different
strange
channel.
and unfamiliar place. I guess I was still getting used to it, but that's not the only thing that was keeping me up that night. I tried desperately to rationalize what it could be so I wouldn't have to get out of bed, but eventually my curiosity got the better of me and I found myself peering outside the bedroom window, overlooking the backyard. Unsurprisingly, there wasn't
Giant fish
all that much
skeleton.
to see except for the dress that had been hanging on the line since I arrived, and a black cat that looked like it had just been rummaging through the trash. It was too late to do anything about it now, but as I was about to return to bed, I noticed something that I hadn't noticed the night before.
Did he have a fucking
A
brick
scarecrow
gun?
in the middle of the field. I didn't think much of it at the time, but little did I know that it would symbolize the beginning of something very sinister.
Little did I know.
The following morning, while cleaning up the mess outside,
Looks like he's
I
just grown
remembered the
grass.
scarecrow, but couldn't see it very well from where I was standing and decided to just carry on with some more household chores. By nightfall, I had already forgotten about the scarecrow and was more preoccupied with keeping myself warm through the night, and I remember the strong howling wind outside
Yeah.
that made it feel even colder than the night before.
What are the implications?
Eventually, I did start to doze off, which is when I began to hear the same noise coming from outside. I just assumed that it was the cat again, but when I approached the window, the backyard was completely empty, and I realized the sound was coming from the field just beyond the fence. which immediately drew my attention to the scarecrow and something that completely caught me off guard.
It's a magic house.
I knew for certain there was only one
Yeah, those things are
scarecrow in the field
huge.
the night before.
She's got a
The
girlfriend?
uncanny revelation that I wasn't alone out there in the country gave me the creeps, and I began to wonder why anyone would
Dude,
place
the
two
wife of
scarecrows
Harold
so
would be a
close
cool,
together,
like,
and why that dress looked so familiar.
second entry in the
I couldn't shake
series.
this feeling that someone was watching me.
Like Bride of
from outside.
Frankenstein.
Perhaps it was just someone from a neighboring farmhouse, just trying to help out.
Wife
or
of
some kind
Harold.
of prank meant to scare me. For the sake of a false sense of comfort, I refused to believe that it was anything more than that, and just headed back to bed to salvage a decent night's sleep. But it wasn't long before I began to hear more strange noises coming from outside. What I witnessed next is something that still haunts me, even today. Both scarecrows, now with their heads missing, and the appearance of yet another scarecrow. I felt truly disturbed at this point, and with no way of contacting the police, I decided it would be best just to get in my car and drive to the nearest payphone.
The crime of passion.
But as I was getting ready, I started to hear the excruciating sound of grinding metal, which is when I realized something even more terrifying.
Sick.
Not only had the scarecrow moved closer to the house, it was now looking directly at me. I immediately left the house after that and drove off as fast as I could and didn't stop for at least 5 miles. I haven't been back there since, and I still find myself wondering what might have happened to me had I stayed one more night at that abandoned house.
That it? Why didn't you stay there longer? You should have found out. Yeah, what if Harold had a wife? They had like kids and stuff, and it actually became like a sitcom. Ray Romano.
When I was a kid, I was really into paranormal things such as ghosts and
that's loud.
spirits, so I always got really excited for Halloween. On one Halloween, my parents took me and my brother to a ghost tour in the city.
Cut the poor kid's hair. Come on, he
During
can't
the
see.
tour, we would visit real haunted houses, which were said to have some really violent ghosts. I couldn't be more excited. We arrived at the location for the tour meetup, an empty parking lot, but we were a bit early and nobody else had arrived yet. It was a chilly October night, so my parents decided that we should find a building to wait in until more people arrive.
Let's find a building
We
to wait in.
walked over to the building that
Let's
the
just go
parking lot
wait
was
in
meant
this
for,
fucking
an
building.
old hotel, and entered the vestibule.
Yeah, my dad used to just
We
bring us
tried
into
to fully
buildings.
enter the building, but we found
break
that the
in.
doors leading to the lobby inside were locked. After a few minutes of standing around, I started to feel strange. A nauseous feeling had swept my stomach. Goosebumps ran up and down my arms, and a piercing feeling of being
Yeah, we
watched
needed to
was
see that.
stabbing, almost
Need to see
burning
those
my back.
goosebumps in your sleeve.
Looking around, it was obvious that me and my family were the only ones inside the vestibule. The lobby of the building was also devoid of people. Once we saw people enter the parking lot, we left, and I
Devoid.
felt better. And after that, I was shocked to see the first place we stopped on the tour was the building my family had been waiting in.
Oh my god.
Now, this building we won't enter.
Curb Your
because
Enthusiasm
the spirit
song.
inside here is more violent than the others will encounter.
Bum, bum,
The
bum.
guide stated. In here, we have the Shadow Man. He doesn't terrorize the whole building, just the area that you enter through. He's been known to slap and scratch people coming inside. A few pictures were passed around. All of a sudden, I don't know how and why, but I recognized that an inky black figure stood against the door's windows. Its eyes were glowing white, and it had long fingers and pointed nails.
Isn't that just salad fingers?
It was freaky to think that I might have been targeted by the Shadow Man, but I didn't think much of it until after the tour when my family went back home. I started to complain to my mom that my back was itching and burning, so she grabbed some ointment and told me she would look at it. We thought it was just a bug bite. We had been walking around outside at night after all. When she lifted my shirt, she asked when I had scratched my back. I told her I hadn't. She took a picture on her phone and showed it to me. I was met with a long red scratch leading from my shoulder to the middle of my back. The skin on my back was a shade of red, like a rash. Me and
It just
all of
happened.
my family couldn't say anything, but just turned back straight to our house. The Shadow Man had got me.
The Shadow Man. It looked like the Iron Titan or something. Damn it, I keep losing my spot in the channel. Scrolling down. True mysterious elf story. Oh, no, I just misread that. um, Damn.
I was attacked by a monster in a lake. I won't tell you the country and
Pretty
area
cinematic.
I live in. When I was 21, my friends and I decided to check out the big lake nearby. The three of
big
us
lake.
got to the lake. It was a beautiful sight. This lake is not that popular since it's not a famous tourist site. Naturally, the lake has not seen that many visitors. We decided to fish there. It's originally banned to fish there, but we thought we wouldn't get caught anyways. We settled down with our fishing rods. We caught much fish,
Sick.
continuing
Much
to catch
fish.
one big fish after another. Meanwhile, I could feel something strong tugging my rod. This is a gigantic fish, I thought, pulling with all my might, but it wouldn't come out of the water, so I thought my rod was stuck under a rock. It wouldn't even budge, so I thought, damn, it got stuck under a rock, and tried to shake the rod left and right to get
Just
it
the
out
ring.
of there. It
Fucking
was that moment.
the story of
Suddenly,
Smeagol.
an enormous force sucked my rod in and ended up falling into the
It
water from the
sucked it.
strength. It happened so fast that I couldn't even let go. All my friends laughed at me after I fell into the water. But the fishing rod was sucked into the water in the blink of an eye. All of us were surprised by that. It was as if a giant fish with great strength, maybe like a shark, was living in this lake.
Oh,
I was
fuck.
frightened and tried to swim my way out. And at that moment, I stepped on something big. It was not the ground. It was moving. I could instinctively feel from the touch. It was a giant being. But there can't be a giant fish like a shark in a lake. I was absolutely terrified, and I
Swimming
swam toward the
slow,
land to get
slower
out of
than
the
anything
water.
in the world.
My friends also shouted to come quickly, and I saw their faces were suddenly seized with fear. I witnessed a massive shadow over the water in front of me. A gigantic monster jumped out of the water right in front of me. It was a monster, not a fish. How should I describe it? I didn't get to give a good look during that urgent situation. But the feeling that I got at that brief
understand.
moment was that it looked like a dinosaur. It didn't eat me, fortunately. I frantically swam out of the water, and when I stepped on the land, it tried to attack me from my back. but I managed to
Dark
kick it at
Souls.
its mouth. It went back into the
He
water
kicked
after
its
that.
mouth.
Even at a glance, it was gigantic, like the size of a whale. I barely stepped onto the land and fell to the
Yeah,
ground
it's okay,
with my
guys.
friends
I got it.
shrieking. I couldn't feel my legs, and my whole body was shaking. I saw the giant shadow slowly disappearing into the water. My friends and I stared at the water for a while. Then we immediately packed and drove back home at
Is
a
that
high
the
speed.
fucking pond? It's just like a puddle.
We reported it to the police, but they thought we were pulling a prank. The lake was too big and deep, so it would be difficult to properly search for it too. Since that day, we never even went back near that
His
lake
reflection
ever
is kind
again.
of scary.
I was traumatized from the incident and quit doing the thing I used to love, fishing. I can't even go into the
fuck?
water anymore. What was that I saw back
What
then?
are those feet? What the fuck was wrong
it
with his
just a
feet?
gigantic fish? Or was it some other life form that we don't know of? I still cannot forget the fear of that day.
Be cool if the sea monster just like exploded out of the sink. It attacked him from like the drain or something. That'd be kind of sick, you know? All right. Watch a few more. Creepy true incidents. They've got a lot of bizarre stories. So ghost ones. Here we go.
I was in my friend's birthday party. It was
Oh,
11
audience,
p.m. After the party, I drove my friend to their house, 2 hours away, drive from the party we'd been. When we went to their village, it's a pretty big village, and most of the owner is rich. While I was driving, there is a street there,
Pretty big
kind of
village.
500 meters long, and is very dark and creepy.
500
The car I was
meters.
driving is a Toyota Revo. It has 11 seating capacity, and we are just 3 inside the car. I passed that creepy street, I'm kind of scared because it's dark and a lot of trees that full of leaves and brushes. There's no street light. It's just my car headlights that give light on the road. After we pass that street and I'm dropped them on their house and I'm just alone to go back to my home. But I was scared because there's no alternate route. I really need to pass that creepy street in their village.
It's just a
I have
Toyota
no
commercial.
choice but to be brave. So, when I'm about to pass that street, it's really dark, but I have no choice but
There's
to
a
pass
screamer
that creepy street.
that's coming
While
up.
I was driving
You
on
ready?
that creepy street, about in the middle of it, suddenly, I felt cold, but my aircon temperature was not that cold.
I think this
And
one's just a
suddenly,
bad translation.
My back of the neck starts to feel cold. When I look in my rear mirror view,
How'd she get
I
in?
saw something sitting on the back of Sit looking at me. It's a woman and wearing white clothes and red eyes. I was so scared. So I drive too fast and my car engines start making a lot of noise. And so fast. There's a speed bump, but I didn't
And
stop.
so fast.
My car started to slam its front bumper on the road when I drive too fast in the speed bump because I was so scared. Until I reached the guardhouse office. I told the guards what happened, and they told me there was really a ghost on that street because
You
one
just have a
time
cupcake?
there's a tricycle was passing that street, and woman asked if she could get a ride, so the tricycle driver let her ride, and she told the driver to drive her to the hospital. When they arrived at the hospital, the tricycle driver was so shocked because the woman
What?
she picked up was not inside the tricycle. And my friend told me there's a story on that street several years ago that a girl was murdered and raped on that street because there was a lot of dark and tall bushes.
Okay, that's
So when I'm
fucked up.
driving alone, I always ask someone to come with me during night. And I don't want to drive alone at night anymore.
Don't want to
because
drive
I don't
alone.
want to see again someone's ghost riding again.
Couldn't
with
she?
me.
Yeah, couldn't she have just
I
gotten
hope her
out and
soul
like
rest in peace.
just ran away? Especially if you're driving like a trike with a passenger car. Maybe she just jumped out and skipped on the fair. Right? It's possible. Hell yeah, this one's great. Nah, this one's off.
This is a true story told to me by my grandmother a few years ago. I had brought up Bigfoot as a topic and showed her the famous Ohio howl. She snapped to attention in fierce recognition and said, "I heard that one time when me and your grandpa were fishing on the river." It happened down in southeastern Oklahoma, west
heard
of
him
Broken Bow
before.
Lake, when my grandparents decided to go catfishing in a spot we'll call the Big Hole. This was their favorite place to catch catfish, as the depth of the river allowed for bigger fish than what was normal. And so after a long drive into the woods, they picked their place along the bank and set up their gear. Sitting on the bank, they were enjoying the nice time period between sundown and nighttime, feeling the cool air from the water cooling them off from the fleeting sun's rays. That's when they heard what was described as a yell from upriver. Now it's at this point I have to say that my grandmother is a sweetheart, but in some situations, she lacks some common sense, as when she heard the yell, the first thing she did was to mimic it. They went back and forth between each other for about a minute, before it stopped, and she thought that was the end of it. Hours pass, and sometime around midnight, they hear the same yell again, only it's closer and louder than before. If you're wondering whether she tried to mimic the yell again, the answer is yes, and again it was a back and forth. However, this time when it stopped, there was silence for a while. Suddenly, an enormous splash came from just up the river. After the first splash, there was another, and another, until they realized it was rocks being thrown into the water, steadily coming closer with every throw. My grandfather decided that he'd had enough and started to pack everything they brought.
My grandfather's
telling my grandma to go
bloodlust
start the truck that
began.
was sitting at the top of the embankment. Once she got to the top, she froze at the trailhead because she could see a dark figure in the trees standing next to the truck, yards from where she was. This figure was taller than the truck by at least a foot or more, and easily towered over her. She could hear this thing breathing heavily, not in a tired way, but more aggressive, as if to say, "I know you're here, but I own this land, and you aren't welcome."
Okay.
Right then and there, my grandma made the smartest decision of the night and walked right back down the bank to my grandpa so she wouldn't have to be alone with that thing. When she got back down there, he asked her why she hadn't started the truck, but all she said was, "Let me help you and I'll tell you later." They finished packing and now had to return to the truck, but once they got there was no sign of that thing she had seen. Relieved, they hopped in and sped out of there as quickly as possible. In the truck, she told him of the figure she saw by the truck, and the two of them swore they would never go back.
I saw Bigfoot.
To this day, they still haven't, and now that the roads going there are all blocked off by the Forestry Service, I doubt they ever will. I marveled at her story because not
And then
only
he
was
was in
she
the
someone
back
who
seat.
didn't make up tales, she was also a very experienced woodswoman and had accompanied my grandpa on many hunting and fishing
Look
ventures.
at that fish, that
So
dumbass
to say
fish.
she knew about the animals that should and shouldn't be in the forest would be an understatement.
Then all of a sudden he was in the back seat. Dude, the Bigfoot ones are good. That might be like one of the only Bigfoot ones he's ever done. True Bigfoot horror story. Out. Yeah, no other Bigfoot one. Order. No, we already watched this one. Just lost my spot again. Crazy neighbor. A clown killed my dad. Hide and seek at the wig factory. They're all good.
There's a building that has a parking garage with a bicycle parking area on the lowest level that me and a group of my friends like to hang out at and skateboard. I called up my friends Jordan, Dorian, Jalen, and Aditya one Sunday to ask if they wanted to go skateboarding with me at the garage. They all agreed, so we met up at my house and rode our skateboards and longboards through the unkept paths between the
They all
apartment
agreed.
buildings and arrived at the garage. We waited for a car to drive in and set off the sensor to open the garage door. Then we tailgated in. When we got inside, we rode our boards around, just practicing some skills. Eventually, we rode down to the lower level and sat in the bicycle parking area to have a break and drink some soda. All of a sudden, a car pulled up and parked in a spot that was visible from the bicycle parking area. The car sat in the spot with its engine running and the driver still sitting inside. Then another van pulled up and shut off its engine in the middle of the road. Both drivers got out and met each other halfway. They were both tall and intimidating with their hoods up. One driver passed the other.
Nah, these are from a few years ago, but
then they suddenly began to argue.
I feel like
We
AI
all
could
watched
probably
in
pull it
awe
off.
as they flung their hands around dramatically and started to shout. We couldn't make out what they were saying since the loud echo distorted their voices. We all froze as the van driver pulled out a gun and shot the other driver in the throat. The driver collapsed, blood pooling around him. The van's driver yelled something, and then we saw two other guys get out of the van, one tossing the body into the back seat, and the other began wiping up the blood. Something was going on
Damn,
here,
they
and I
cleaned
could
it, too.
tell we were in danger. Dorian whispered that we had to leave, now. We all began to quietly grab our skateboards and started hiding behind a wall. But the blood cleaning guy spotted Jalen as he was making his way over.
The
and
blood
yelled at the
cleaning
driver.
guy?
The van started up, and right then, Aditya screamed. We all threw down our skateboards and began pushing away as fast
Roll
as
out.
possible. I could hear so many noises in my ears, like skateboards moving, voices shouting and screaming, and the roaring van behind us. Dorian was on an electric skateboard
I was a
and
blood
taking the
cleaning
lead
guy
as we
by
wound
trade.
around the ramps, rising to the next level. Jordan was next to me, and Aditya was close behind us on his scooter. Jalen, who had been the last to leave, was falling behind, and we could see the van speeding up behind him.
It'd be funny if the van just like ate him.
I yelled for him to run to the side, and he popped his skateboard into his hands and took a sharp turn to the left, running up a fire escape. The van screeched around the corner as Dorian began approaching the garage door. And that's when I realized something. We had to wait for a car to trigger the sensor and open the door. I yelled at Dorian to take the staircase to the right, and he did. Jordan and I hopped off our skateboards and ushered Aditya into the staircase.
Hop off.
We burst out into some dirty apartment floor, and I quickly called Jalen. He picked up and told us he was outside the apartment building by the main road. We held our skateboards and ran through the apartment floor until we found the fire escape. Then we managed to run outside and met Jalen, where we called the cops. After the cops arrived, they started to search the parking garage. They couldn't find any traces nor the cars there, so they decided to check the security footage. The footage revealed the van's license plate was covered with duct tape, but they did catch the license plate of the car of the driver who'd been shot. They said they'd keep us updated and gave us a lift home. Since then, we've never seen the van again or gotten any important information from the cops. My friends and I have recently resorted to the much safer and public skate park nearby and never visited that garage again.
Never again. Let's go to a different garage and skate from now on. No. Had a couple other things I wanted to watch too. Some things bookmarked here. Also, the tornado iceberg was something I wanted to watch, maybe. How interesting that was. Oh yeah, there was some Dr. Bob we were watching yesterday. Sick. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick, play an ad so we can get rid of the pre-roll. I'll be back in a minute. Sit tight. Continue. And then I'll probably play some Dredge in a little bit. So I don't even think there's that much left to that game. I think it's a pretty short game. I haven't been watching a lot of Outdoor Shalong. I have to go through his stuff. Some of his videos are so long form that like too much at once. I'll be right back. Sit tight. right. Let's watch a little bit of Dr. Bob.
If he breathes, the bear will see him. Lying flat on his
Watch
stomach,
some of the
the boy has
Bob.
no choice but to watch as the hulking brute
This is actually
meets
a
his father before his very
well-known
eyes.
SCP, I
Lying
think.
in the thicket just a few trees away, the boy knows that any small movement he makes could prove fatal. A bear this large, hunting for
Big
its hibernation,
bear.
will have no issue chasing him down in a split second and doing exactly
Damn.
what it did to his father, to him. The boy is utterly powerless. All he can do is stay deathly still.
Yeah, the
and
chattering
watch.
sound always is so
They
funny.
found the tracks too late. On the way back to camp, they'd been following the wooded cliff that
The
lines
context of
ocean's
what's
edge.
happening.
Bows and salmon slung over their shoulders. They'd been so proud of their catch and the prospect of bringing it back to the tribe that they hadn't kept their wits about them. By the time they'd seen the enormous prints in the dirt, the sound of lumbering footsteps were already echoing through the trees behind them. The boy's bow is too far out of reach. He dropped it when his father pushed him into the thicket. He's got the knife hanging at his side, but he doubts it's long enough to even get through the bear's fatty hide. In contrast, the only thing protecting him from its bite is the leather hide slung across his shoulders and a woven garment from the tribe's elders. One slash of the bear's claw, and he'd be. A breeze ruffles his hair. The boy's eyes widen in horror. That wind hadn't come from in front of him, but from behind, blowing his scent, his
From
fear,
behind.
directly towards the bear's nostrils. The boy plants his muddy palms into the dirt, staring at the animal. Its nostril twitches, then twitches again. It half turns its head, sniffing the air. Maybe it won't bother with him. The bear's turning back to its meal already. The boy lets out a sigh of relief, and a twig snaps. The bear snarls and whips its head around. For a second, the two of them lock eyes, predator and prey. Then the boy takes off running. Fast as he can, he leaps through the undergrowth,
Dead.
ferns and nettles whipping at his shins. He fumbles the knife out of its sheath and slings the water skin off his shoulder, throwing it wildly behind him. He doesn't know if he hit the bear. He doesn't have time to turn around and see. It's going to be on him in an instant. Up ahead, he sees sunlight streaming through the thick trees, the cliff edge. If he can just get to that, maybe he can climb down and... No, there's no time. Besides, bears are better climbers, better swimmers, better runners. All the boy can hope for is that he's a better jumper. Him and the boys from the tribe have leapt off plenty of cliffs along the shore,
Okay.
but never these ones. There are too many rocks, too many shallows. But the thundering of four enormous paws behind him is looming larger and larger. He can almost feel the bear's hot breath on the back of his neck. There's nothing for it. Here goes. The trees clear, the sun blasts his skin, a claw slashes at his back, and the boy launches himself into the air. The wind carries him. The weightlessness
Wouldn't the bear,
of
like,
wheeling his
not
arms
really
and
give a
legs
shit and
through the
probably go
empty
after
sky
him?
is almost enough to make him laugh with joy.
Oh, wait.
Until the boy looks down. The cliff is higher, much, much higher than he'd realized. His momentum carries his torso forward.
It's
into a
like
tumble.
way higher.
He's not going to land straight, and he can see jagged rocks everywhere beneath him. The boy closes his eyes and crashes into the sea. All of the air is slammed out of his lungs. His knee hits something hard and sharp in the water. The swell throws him away from the shore and pulls him deep. Without air in his chest, he can't float. Kicking hard as he can, the boy swims upwards, eyes still screwed shut. His face bashes into a sandy rock. No, that's not upwards. Which way is it? Which way should he swim? The ocean current rolls him over and over. Darkness fills his mind. But his feet
pretty
find
spooky.
a hard surface, and he pushes against it, launching himself through the water, kicking as hard as he can. The darkness fades. Light. The boy's head breaches the water, and he splutters for air, rubbing the water out of his eyes. He looks around wildly. The sea has carried him away from the cliff and out into open water, with lifting and dropping him in
Riptide.
each wave, carrying him this way and that, like a flower in the wind. And there,
Like a flower
traversing
in the
the cliff
wind.
face, scrambling down the
Are you
rocks,
fucking kidding me?
is the bear.
I knew it.
The boy's stomach turns. It
He's
reaches
like,
the bottom of
"Are
the
you
cliff
fucking
and
kidding
sees
me?"
him there in the water. Tipping back its head, it roars at an almighty volume, deafening the boy over the sound of the waters. Even from this distance, the animal looks impossibly large. It dwarfs the boulders that line the water's edge. It slips into the water, barely making a ripple, and kicks off from the shore. Going straight
Barely.
for him, the bear is covering the distance so fast, he only has seconds left. With barely the strength to keep himself afloat, the boy knows he'll never be able to outswim this creature. Instead, he takes a deep breath and looks up at the woods, remembering all of the happy moments he'd spent in there with his father. A current swells beneath the boy and almost throws him out of the water. An enormous shadow flies through the depth beneath him.
Oh, fuck.
A whale? It couldn't be. Whatever it is, the shadow is swimming straight at the advancing bear. So fixated on its prey, the bear doesn't even notice what's approaching until it's too late. The ocean explodes. A blast of water as tall as the cliffs themselves shoots up into the air and showers the boy's head. Somewhere in the midst of the spray, a monster erupts from the depths. Snapping its jaw around the bear, it lifts the animal into the air and throws it against the cliff. The impact is so strong that a small landslide follows the bear's rolling body as it tumbles back towards the water. But the boy has eyes only for the monster emerging from the sea. Crawling up the rocks with one gnarled foot after another, the boy can hardly make sense of what he's looking at. It seems to have some kind of scaly hide, harder than the rocks surrounding it. A wave crashes against the monster as it leers over the bear and sinks its teeth into the animal's hide. Unable to look away, the boy kicks out and starts swimming away up the coast. Only once he's a long way around the bay does he dare to clamber out and back onto land. That night, once the rest of the tribe have gone to sleep, the boy can't help but lie wide awake in his tent. Without his father here,
the fuck?
It's not the same. Quietly rolling up the hide doorway, the boy slips
I guess if he's like a caveman, he doesn't really question it that much.
Beautiful smooth walls inside.
Just another monster.
It's the cave of their ancestors, the place where all life started. The fire in the cave has to always burn. Fortunately for him, the cave is empty. The boy stares up at the wall in wonder. Finger drawings of animals, hunters, mothers, shamans, gods, and forests fill almost every part of it. Only one space remains in the corner, a finger painting of the rocky cliffs with the swelling sea beneath. Dipping his finger into the paint, the boy sits by the wall and starts to paint. A terrible monster crawling out of the sea, with a scaly hide stronger than any rock.
And has long hair.
You know that from just some finger painting. The archaeologist turns to the group of researchers surrounding him in the cave. UV lights are set up all along the walls, with the blue and violet shapes revealed all across the stonework. The archaeologist can't help but empathize with the spiritualism of their long-forgotten ancestors who'd lived in these caves thousands of years ago. The professor was the one who asked the question, a cold woman standing well over 6 feet tall with a crop of fiery ginger hair. To him, she seems less of a scientist and more of a military leader. But what does he know? Walk with me, she says and leads him out of the cave. Personnel fills the surrounding area. Most of them are armed. Cranes lift huge sheets of reinforced lead plating into place. Several mysterious vats line the edge of the forest, each adorned with more warning and hazard signs than you'd see in a nuclear power station. The two of them have to pause for a moment as 3 tanks roll past them. The archaeologist breaks the silence.
It looks so out of place.
You know the reason I started all my research in the first place? Did I ever tell you that story? Every early civilization in the world, whether it's ancient China, Mesopotamia, South America, Northern Europe, all these cultures, you take a look at their mythology and what do you find? The professor ignores him, instead choosing to bark orders at a group of agents talking over coffee. They all immediately dump their drinks and get back to work. What one thing do they all talk about, even though it never existed? Dragons. All these disparate people with no contact with one another, all of them still draw pictures of dragons. The professor stops walking at the edge of the cliff. The pair of them stand there, surveying the vast ocean stretching out in front of them.
Are they all like pretty different,
as researchers, agents, and workers rush around behind them. After a long pause, the professor asks him to proceed. In ancient Hebrew texts, when they talk about God creating the world in 7 days, what happens on day 5? The professor flicks the hair out of her eyes and replies curtly, God created fish in the sea and birds in the sky. Well, not exactly. Look at the original Hebrew. He created all of the fish that teem in the sea, sure, but he also created Leviathan, a serpent-like monster from the depths, as old as the world itself. You think that's what we're dealing with? Maybe. Or something worse. By nightfall, preparations are operational. Enormous floodlights switch on, one after another, illuminating an enormous steel box with an open lid at the top, surrounded by armed agents, huge net launchers, and several tanks. It all seems a bit excessive as far as the archaeologist is concerned.
That's it?
He isn't
They're gonna get
officially
wrecked.
still supposed to be here, but in all the scramble for the Foundation to get the capture site ready, no one noticed that he had stuck around. From the viewing platform several hundred meters away, he has to watch it all unfold through a pair of binoculars. Out above the water, suspended from one of the cranes, is an elephant carcass. The professor told him that the Foundation had even marinated it for extra
Poor
flavor.
elephant.
He had only been recruited into this project a couple of months ago, but from what he could tell, it's been an ongoing priority for the Foundation for several years now. The scale of the operation of just setting up at this site is already mind-boggling, but they've been chasing up leads like this for years now. Arriving at scenes, they suspect this creature has been sighted in the past and setting up traps for it. He was only brought in out of desperation. The Foundation had exhausted all recent hunting grounds and was trying to cast the net even wider. He'd just been quietly working on his university research paper about ancient reptile drawings when the agents had let themselves into his office. But staring through his binoculars now, the archaeologist knows there's no chance of this operation actually working. They have floodlights, for crying out loud. No intelligent predator would come anywhere near that elephant carcass. Movement. Not in the waters or any of the lit-up areas. No, there's something in the forest line, just behind a group of researchers. He reaches instinctively for his walkie-talkie, then stops himself. How many times had he got jittery before and reported something preemptively? The agents already don't take him seriously as it is. He can't be jumping at shadows. But there it is again, a shape moving fast through the trees. He scans the binoculars this way and that, trying to find it. Just a group of researchers there, some agents there, supply crates, researchers, agents. Wait, weren't there more of them a second ago?
It reminds me of a monster from like
Someone's gone missing.
Final Fantasy or something too.
He clicks on the radio. South Lookout Team, report in. Nothing. South Lookout Team? A sickening feeling settles in his stomach. With all those bright lights everywhere, they're casting a lot of dark shadows. He has to do something fast. Running down from the lookout point, the archaeologist takes off running through the trees to the site. He holds his radio up to his mouth as he goes, trying to get anyone to respond. But it's hopeless. The thicket cracks and crunches under his feet as he tries to make his way through the dark woods, ignoring the feeling that crawls up his neck of being watched. A boulder blocks his way. The archaeologist grabs onto it with both hands and hauls himself on top of it, stopping for a moment to catch his breath. From up here, he can see the floodlit capture site. The tanks and cranes still sit rumbling, ready to go at a moment's notice, but he can't see any ground crew anymore. He switches the radio to the open channel and calls out for anyone to respond. The professor's voice crackles back at him.
What are you still doing here? This is a highly dangerous operation that you don't have clearance for.
He yells at her to cancel it. They need to evacuate the site immediately. It's compromised. She laughs derisively and cuts off the channel. No, she has to believe him. People are dying, and more of them will if she doesn't. The archaeologist whispers to himself in the darkness. It's no monster. It's just an innocent creature. You're playing with a power you don't understand. It's strange. For a moment, he swears he almost hears a voice whispering something back to him in the woods. But when he looks around, he's all on his own. He has to keep moving. The creature could be anywhere. Hopping off the jagged boulder, the archaeologist takes off running through the forest once more, looking over his shoulder every few steps. The light must be playing tricks on him. In the darkness, he can't see the boulder he was standing on a moment ago anywhere. He bursts out of the tree line and into the clearing right next to the steel box.
I don't know why, but he reminds me of somebody.
With a large trap
like
door suspended over the open lid.
Character.
Well, if he wants to be seen and heard, that's where he needs to go. The archaeologist runs up the ramp and waves his hands wildly in the air. The tanks all turn their turrets to aim at him. The crane holding the enormous steel lid for the enclosure looms menacingly above his head. And there, marching out onto the field, looking absolutely furious, is the professor. Her red hair looks more like a ball of flames right now. We need to evacuate the site now. It's here.
Her red hair
She
looks like
snarls
a
and
ball
marches
of
up the ramp to meet him,
flames.
jabbing a finger in the archaeologist's face. He suddenly realizes how much taller she is. You are not jeopardizing our one chance of catching this thing. Get out of the way, or I will have you detained. Besides, what evidence do you have? But the archaeologist isn't looking at her. Instead, his eyes stare in horror at the elephant carcass suspended behind her. There was a huge, reptilian bite mark taken out of it. A testing bite, like the ones given by sharks. She turns to follow his gaze, and all of her rage is washed away in a sickening delight.
She's getting killed.
Yeah. A scream from the crane holding the elephant makes them both jump, but by the time they look up at the cabin, all they see is a hulking shadow leaping away into the darkness. The professor clicks on her walkie-talkie and starts issuing commands. No one responds, except the tank crews. She tries again. Radio silence. Now the gravity of the situation really starts to hit her. Eyes wide with panic, she runs off down the ramp, barking into her radio and leaving the archaeologist up here on his own. Suddenly, under all of these lights, he feels very exposed. It could be anywhere in the shadows. Footsteps, heavy planted footsteps tremor through the ground, and out of the woods walks the creature. Several meters long, fat from all of its hunting, beast that would soon be known as SCP-682 slinks into view. It looks up at him, standing there on the trapdoor over a metal box, and looks like it's almost ready to laugh at how easy this will be.
You guys remember that
Boom.
show?
The tank blast hits the creature square in the
is it
torso,
called?
knocking
like-
it sideways. Boom, boom, boom.
We've spoken about it
Three
before. I
tanks
can't
open
remember. the
fire
name
one
of it.
after the other, laying round after round into the colossal reptile, kicking more and more dust into the air. Before long, there's a crater in the ground so large that it looks almost like an asteroid hit it. Smoke and dust fill the air. The archaeologist's eyes fill with tears. That majestic creature, roaming the earth long before mankind ever did, exterminated just like that. Cowards. That's what people really are.
Oh, it ain't
Cowards.
done.
But as the dust clears, a groaning sound echoes around the clearing. The archaeologist shields his eyes and peers into the crater as best he can, but there's nothing there. Boom! He wheels around and almost falls backwards in shock. The SCP has snuck through the haze and leapt onto one of the tanks. It bites and tears at the armored bodywork, doing all it can to destroy it. In a panic, two of the tanks point toward one another and
What
fire,
the
destroying
fuck?
themselves in the process. The creature rounds on the remaining tank and bites down hard on the barrel. The tank fires, the round going straight down the monster's throat and exploding inside its gut. The backdraft from the blast shoots back
But
to the
he
tank.
liked it.
A puff of smoke trails out of the hatch at the top. And suddenly, once again, the clearing is quiet. Turning back to the archaeologist, SCP-682 slinks towards him, smoke still curling up out of his leering teeth. With heavy, thunking steps, it climbs the ramp towards him, stopping just short of the trap door. The two of them stare each other in the eye, predator and prey. Neither
He's
moves for a
tiny.
moment. Then it opens its mouth. The archaeologist closes his eyes.
Do you know that you disgusting creatures deserve this?
He opens them. Did the monster just speak?
What do they hope to accomplish by
What
attacking
is he talking about?
me?
He gulps hard.
Oh, he
That
can change
whisper he heard
size?
in the woods, the rock he'd been standing on. They're scientists. Scientists always try to learn more things, understand the world better. We think you can't be killed, so they're testing their hypothesis. The creature growls. The stench of rotten flesh fills the archaeologist's nose. It takes a step towards him, then another. The archaeologist runs. He'll leap off the other end of the platform. It's a big jump, but he could make it. The predator's breath is on the back of his neck. He jumps just as the trapdoor gives way. With an enormous thud, the SCP falls into the steel enclosure. Before it has a chance to move, the crane unhitches the steel lid, and it crashes down into place, sealing the monster inside. The archaeologist lands in the dirt and rolls onto his back to see the professor, wild-eyed and cheering, up in the crane's cabin. He lies there on his back, panting and staring up at the stars. A clunking sound echoes through the clearing, and the gurgle of a liquid flowing through pipes. He sits up, adrenaline still pumping through him. The professor has plugged a pipe into the metal enclosure and is running gallons and gallons of liquid into it. He follows the tube with his eyes, all the way to the enormous hazardous vats on the edge of the clearing. Hydrochloric acid. His eyes widen in horror. The professor laughs at him. Come on, cheer up. We're just scientists, that's what you said. Just testing a hypothesis. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like...
Did it, like, survive or what? You ever know?
The Switchblade's knife glints in the dark, and the bully holding it runs through the arcade, screaming in terror. The kid watches, shocked by the insanity unfolding, as 20 tiny, vicious gorillas chase the knife-wielding bully as tears streak his face. This situation defies all explanation, unless you know about SCP-3092. Let's go back to the beginning. The kid almost trips over his laces as his chucks hammer against the sidewalk. The headphones for his Walkman bounce against his neck as the wind rushes past. Heaving in as much air as he can, the kid runs through town, looking desperately this way and that
Rise of
for
the
any
Planet of
grown-ups he
the Apes.
recognizes. No one. Just strangers with thick mustaches and perms chatting outside Blockbuster and Walden Books, totally oblivious to the fact that he's running for his life.
Only 90s
The
kids.
kid cocks an ear, and sure enough, he hears that all too familiar rolling, clattering sound coming after him. The skateboards are catching up. A few insults catch on the wind and float across to him. Four Eyes,
Yeah, I haven't
Earthworm,
thought of
and
Walden
a good
books
few
in
names
a
that he
long
doesn't want to
time.
repeat. Apparently, their town used to have a good Native American community.
Bob's
That's why his
Burgers?
parents had moved here. But nowadays, it seems to just be white faces all around him. From what the bullies are shouting as they chase him, and the total apathy of the grown-ups on the sidewalks at the words, it's no wonder everyone else moved away. A rock hits the back of his head, almost knocking his glasses off. The sound of the tiny wheels roars louder and louder with every block.
The Bob's Burger restaurant in San Fran that like the
Home's way
cartoon's
too
based
far
on
away.
is closing.
His parents aren't expecting him home until nightfall. He needs a
Saw
spot
that
to lay
today.
low. The arcade? It's closed
The
today,
arcade?
but the owner told him
Yo,
where the spare
Bart.
key is. He could go there, but he needs to lose them first. His lungs are burning, and his legs are starting to give up on him. Ice. The kid sees it too late and steps straight onto a patch of it. His Converse slides out from under him and flings his limbs this way and that, trying desperately to stay on his feet as he skids across the ice. His momentum throws him forward, and he sticks out another foot, catching himself back on the sidewalk. Perfect. He turns just in time to see the four bullies on their skateboards hitting the patch and going flying. They land in a heap together, groaning
Got
and
'em.
scuffling, trying to get back up. Now's his chance. The kid shoots off down an alleyway, loops back around the block, turns up a side street, and arrives at the arcade without having looked back once. He snatches the key from under the gutter and looks around the quiet street. Nobody there, thank goodness. He darts through the door and locks it behind him with trembling fingers. Tears flood his eyes as he lets his
I'm sure
forehead rest
there's
against the
one
door.
that exists.
Every damn day, it's more of the same.
A vape
Why can't
shop
he just have
named
some
that.
peace?
There has to be.
Why can't he just be normal? The kid stands there crying for a long time. He can't tell his parents.
What
what's
does this have to
going
do
on.
with monkeys?
They've got enough
Yeah, I
of their
know.
own
The
problems.
suspense is killing
He
me.
tried to tell his teachers, but at lunch, he overheard them laughing and joking about it all between themselves.
Kids.
Just sometimes feels like no one's on his side. The kid takes a deep breath and rubs the moisture out of his eyes. That's enough. If he keeps thinking about it all day, it's only going to feel worse. He's on his own now. He's safe. What he needs to do is just enjoy the little bit of peace he has now before it all starts again. And what better place to be laying low than the arcade? He hits the lights. Pinball, claw machines, and
Hit the
arcade cabinets
lights.
all light up and start playing over one another. Air hockey, basketball hoops, and foosball all beep at him invitingly. He can't help but let a smile spread across his face. He walks across the carpet looking this way and that at
Yo,
Frogger,
Splodger,
Pac-Man,
the
Galaga,
16
Donkey
months.
Kong.
My dude, thank
so
you so
many
much.
choices, so many choices.
Appreciate
He hops
that.
on the counter and hits the side
Getting
of the
up
cash
there. We
register.
only need 25 more to get back to
Revealing
100.
trays stacked full of quarters.
Appreciate it, everybody.
Mr. Burns, the guy who owns the place, told him he's allowed to let himself in and use the money in the register to play
You
whenever
say his
he
name's
wants
Mr.
on the
Burns?
house. As the kid scoops a handful out of the drawer, he realizes he might not be totally on his own in this town after all. Pac-Man beeps into life
I'm
as soon as the
Mr.
quarters fall
Burns.
into the slot. He grabs the joystick and stares intently at the screen, darting this way and that through the maze, munching, munching, munching. Try as they might, the four ghosts just can't catch him. The kid grins. All that time running from four bullies wasn't quite for nothing, was it? But after a couple of levels, he gets bored. He always plays Pac-Man, so much so that he's memorized his route through the first few levels.
I honestly never
And it
really
takes the
liked
fun out of
Pac-Man.
things a bit. He lets the ghosts around him and watches Pac-Man swirl away into nothing.
Like, it's all right
Frogger
for like
isn't
5
much
minutes.
better. He never really clicked with this one for some reason.
I like
Just felt
Frogger
too
more.
stop-start. He lets the frog get run over and stands
The
back,
Stranger
letting out a
Things
sigh.
theme in the background.
Is there anything in here he hasn't touched yet? Wait, what's that? In the corner of the room, there's a new machine, still half covered in a sheet. It hasn't even been
it's
plugged into the wall
Polybius.
yet. The kid skips over to it and bends down to hook it up. There. He stands back, takes hold of the sheet, and pulls as dramatically as he can. It billows and unfurls to reveal a claw machine. Oh. It's just another claw machine. Black Tie Toys is written on the side in classic 80s lettering, just under 2 meters tall or so.
Gorilla.
Nothing to make it stand out from the other cabinets in here. But not only does it look boring, it doesn't have anything he wants inside. Just a bunch of plushy gorillas. Not exactly a brand new cabinet, but worth a shot anyway. The kid slots a coin in and cracks his knuckles. Here goes nothing. The claw swings to life at the slightest touch of the joystick. These things are normally rigged, so he's not exactly expecting much from it. May as well just drop the claw here. All the toys in this one are the same anyway.
May as well.
No way. It's caught onto one of the gorilla's feet, lifting the toy up as it dangles upside down. It swings precariously this way and that as the claw guides it over to the hole. It's a defective toy with a bit of stitching loose on its shoulder, but he couldn't care less. The thrill of getting one first time. The toy drops into the chute and thumps to the bottom, just behind the little door. The kid punches the air and yells in triumph. He did it, first try. He bends down and reaches out into the little flap, just as the flap opens by itself. He freezes as a little toy gorilla opens the door for himself and hops out onto the carpet. The kid yelps.
If it
and
didn't
jumps
make that
backwards,
sound, it
tripping
would
over
be
his
so
feet.
much better.
Somewhere in that chute, between falling in and popping out, this little
I don't
toy
like all the chromatic
well,
aberration like that.
it had come alive. The little gorilla does the
I
same
guess
as
it was
the
like
kid,
for a
leaping
transition,
backwards
kind of.
defensively.
Looks like it has like a
raises two
mouth on its
soft
shoulder.
fists with surprisingly dexterous fingers and looks the kid up and down warily. It orders the kid in a stern militaristic voice to identify himself. The kid's jaw drops open. It can speak? The little plushy gorilla's voice is gruff, but high-pitched enough to match his size. He barely comes up to the kid's knee.
Boxing around the
gorilla
world.
asks him if he's friendly. The kid nods quickly. The gorilla's eyes narrow.
What's your favorite fruit?
The gorilla asks.
Bananas. Phew.
The gorilla says, dropping his fists.
You never can be too careful.
The kid dusts himself off and climbs to his feet. The gorilla deftly scales the side of the claw machine and hangs off it, surveying the arcade. The kid asks his name, which seems to stump the little toy. It picks at the loose stitching on his shoulder. The kid suggests calling him Stitches. The gorilla salutes at the sound of his new name.
All right, kid, what's the operation? Give me the sit rep.
Operation? Sit rep? The kid stands there, nonplussed for a moment. Well, they're in an arcade. Stitches nods sagely, taking the intel on board. And they have to stay here until nightfall. The little gorilla has already swung himself up on top of the machine to get a better view of strategic locations.
And where are the hostiles?
The kid hesitates. Stitches looks down at him knowingly. An unspoken understanding passes between them. They could be attacked at any moment. The pair of them take a walk around the room, the kid explaining the situation. 4 bullies, 3 entrances, front door, alley door, and a window. No back rooms or hallways. Those are all locked. The gorilla takes a candy cane from behind the counter and sticks it in the side of his mouth like a cigar. He doesn't seem to be able to chew it or even suck on it. He is just a toy after all. But the kid feels like he can't really point that out. He has no idea how fragile his comrade's ego is.
Look, I can't actually taste it, okay? I can only see, hear, and touch. I'm insecure about it. Leave me alone. We haven't got much time anyway.
The gorilla says.
We've got to prepare our defenses.
The two of them go to work, Stitches barking orders at the kid as they ready themselves for the bully's arrival. The kid asks Stitches what exactly their aim is. The plushie looks at the kid like it's a trick question.
Total domination. Absolute victory. Annihilation. A butchering.
The kid straightens, suddenly feeling very unsure about all of this. He tells Stitches that he doesn't
He's like
want
a
to
World
kill
War II
anyone or
Marine.
anything like that.
Kill.
The little gorilla falls
But
backwards
also
off
a
the
stuffed
throwing machine
monkey.
in surprise.
Kill? No. What's wrong with you? Of course not. We're gonna tickle, bamboozle, inconvenience, and bonk. Where those things fit within the confines of the Geneva Convention, of course.
Bang, bang, bang. The hammering fists on the door are so loud that it shakes on its hinges. They've barely had 10 minutes to get ready. That's not fair. The kid can see the shadows of feet blocking the streetlight. His knees go weak almost straight away at the sound of their cat calling through the cracks. They've found him. He could make a break for the alley door. If he's quiet enough, he could... But it's too late. As he looks at the fire escape, he can see another pair of legs blocking his exit. No point jumping out of the window. They'd see him straight away and have him blocked off from both sides.
He's got to win all the
He looks down
gorillas.
at his squishy little companion. They have no choice. It's time for guerrilla warfare.
Oh,
The front door crashes open, splinters of wood flying everywhere, and 3 of the bullies storm in. Front and center is their ringleader, dressed in all-black skater clothes with a constant sneer on his face.
If it was just like
Must easily
super
be a good
violent,
foot
the way
taller
like
than the
he killed
kid.
them, that would be
Even
kind of
he
good.
looks small, standing in between the twins. Hulking, egg-shaped boys with no hair on their heads or glints in their eyes. The banging noise behind the kid tells him that the 4th bully is trying to kick his way through the alley door. They don't have time to deal with that now. The twins are storming over to him like a pair of freight trains. His legs are really shaking now. He needs to move, but Stitches is gone.
If the gorilla
That
just like
loyal
punched a
gorilla had
hole
been
in
at
that
his
one
side
kid's
just a
head.
moment ago, but as soon as trouble arrived, he disappeared, just like they always do.
There was a few movies
The
with
twins
the
are
toys
nearly upon him now.
attacked.
The kid doesn't have a choice. He takes a deep breath and closes his eyes, ready for a beating. Yeah! The primal scream fills the arcade.
What?
Out of the rafters, a tiny toy gorilla swings down on a loose cable, heading straight for the twins' faces. Their round faces barely have time to go from angry to confused before the cuddly toy is on top of them, pummeling them with its soft fists. Turns out those fists aren't worth much in a fight. Twin 1 pulls the ape off his face and holds it at arm's length. Two of them stare at Stitches, who's swinging his fists wildly through thin air. Apparently lacking the brainpower to be stunned that an inanimate cuddly toy has gained sentience, Twin 1 tosses Stitches over the arcade cabinets, and the pair of them continue their advance. Except the distraction worked just long enough. The kid grins and runs around the cotton candy machine, which by now is rumbling and banging, letting out a thin plume of smoke. His smile falters as they close in on him. Any second now. But the twins are closing in on him, thick arms outstretched to grab him when, bang! The cotton candy machine explodes. Hot,
Did you just use the
sugary wedding
cotton
bursts out
candy
in
machine
all
as an
directions,
IED?
wrapping around the bullies and missing the top of the kid's ducking head by less than an inch. He can't believe that actually worked. Taking a step back to survey the damage, he looks down at the enormous twins, bound up in cotton candy and arguing with each other. The alley door crashes open, and the fourth bully rushes in. He's skinny, with tattoos all down both his arms. Looking at him now up close, the kid reckons he must be a good 10 years older than the other bullies. Why he's still hanging out with high school kids is anyone's guess. The kid gulps. He's only got one more trick up his sleeve, but 2 bullies left to go. The ringleader's disappeared somewhere. He can't worry about that now, though. He just has to focus on
He's
the
probably
old one.
dead from the shrapnel.
The man is leering at him from the back of the arcade. He reaches round to his back pocket and pulls out something small and shiny. Flicking open the knife blade, he spins the blade around between his fingers and winks at the kid. He feels all the blood leave his face. This isn't a game anymore. He needs to get out of here. The kid makes a break for it, running towards the open front doors, but in a flash, the old bully is in front of him, playing with the knife and smiling that same sinister smile. He tries to run back the other way, to the alley door, but the bully is blocking him again, before he can even take a few steps. How is he that fast? Be calm, think. The kid reaches into his pocket. Here goes nothing. He turns to run back to the front doors, but this time throws the pinballs all across the carpet. For a second, it looks like it hasn't worked. The old bully steps in the gaps between the pinballs. He looks down to see them all there scattered around in front of him, but too late. His foot is already landing on about 5 metal balls that all shoot out from under him. He goes flying, crashing right into a Galaga machine head first. His leg twitches a couple times, and he goes still. The knife flies out of his hand, arcing through the air, spinning round and round and round, before landing with a gentle thud on the soft carpet. A sneaker treads onto the handle, a sneaker attached to a hairy leg sticking out of a pair of cord pants. The ringleader bends over to pick up the blade, flicks it open, and holds it against the neck of the little gorilla clutched in his arms. It would almost look funny, the bully threatening a cuddly toy, if the toy wasn't writhing around in fear. The kid cries out in panic for the knife-wielding bully to put his plush gorilla friend down. He's got nothing left, no more tricks up his sleeve. It's over. The bully just grins maniacally at him and pushes the knife harder against the squishy neck. He's got stitches by the shoulder of his arm, just above where the stitching is coming loose. The bully's back is to the cash register. On the wall behind him, dozens of giant cuddly prizes hang lifeless.
They're gonna come to life.
The bully hisses that the kid is gonna pay for making them run all over town. The kid nods his head. He will, he promises. They can beat him up or whatever they like, just don't hurt Stitches. The bully laughs at the gorilla's name.
You gave him a name? You're such a loser. Couldn't come up with anything better than Stitches. What does that name even mean? Let me show you.
The gorilla yells. Twisting away from the blade, he reaches into the gap in his shoulder, crying out in pain, and pulls out handfuls of stuffing, throwing them up into the bully's face. It doesn't do much, but it's enough to distract him. The kid seizes his chance, dashing forward and shoving the bully square in the chest, knocking him backwards and freeing Stitches. The little gorilla runs off to safety straight away. The kid can hardly believe what he's seeing. The bully is getting to his feet now, knife still in hand,
all the things
snarling,
came to life.
but almost immediately, his snarling is drowned out by the sound of a shrieking primate, then another one. Both kid and bully wheel round to see Stitches swinging across the wall of stuffed toys, giving them high fives. As soon as he touches each of them, they transform, falling and turning into crazed gorillas. All of them rushing straight at the bully. His eyes widen in
They just
terror.
turn into
He turns on his
gorillas?
heel and runs out through the open doors, pursued by a small army. He lashes out wildly as he goes, striking one of the gorillas down. Stitches and the kid chase him to the doorway and watch as the little toy gorillas chase the bully off into the night, swinging on lampposts and leaping over cars.
Good thing he ran.
Stitches climbs up onto the kid's shoulder, popping his candy cane cigar back into his mouth.
Our fists are about as hard as Hello Kitty's. Let's see how long it takes him to figure that one out.
A whimper behind them sobers the moment. Turning around, they see the body of the gorilla toy that the bully punched as he left. It lies slumped on a pinball machine, stuffing bursting from its chest. Plumes of cotton cover the glass. Stitches buries his head in the kid's neck, sickened and devastated by the casualty. The dying gorilla looks at him with beady little eyes. It raises a dramatic hand towards him, breathing in shaky gasps.
Mr. Stitches, I don't feel so good.
Like a community theater actor doing Shakespeare, the little toy dies a dramatic death. Throwing his head back, he takes one desperate gasping breath and falls still. The kid stands there in shock, except the little gorilla does seem to be breathing, very lightly, as if pretending he's dead. The kid sidles up to the cabinet and pokes him. Hello? He pokes the gorilla again.
Why are you poking him?
It opens one eye and looks at him, annoyed.
I'm out of the game. Leave me alone.
Stitches hits the kid on the side of the head.
Hey, let him be out of the game in peace. Show some respect. Sorry.
The kid clasps his hands together in humility and stands by the pretend dying gorilla. Stitches salutes. Until they get bored and go off to play a game of Galaga. Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like SCP-705, Militaristic Play-Doh.
Militaristic Play-Doh? Right. Militaristic Play-Doh.
It began, as most bad things do, with the evil mechanizations of one Dr. Ivo Robotnik. This rotund mad scientist had been terrorizing the world of Sonic the Hedgehog and his animal friends for decades, with a single-minded task motivating his every diabolical action: getting his hands on the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald that controls their power. This would allow him to strangle the natural beauty of the world around him and develop it into a cold, unfeeling world of machinery. None would survive his terrible wrath. The problem was, by this point, far too many people had, in fact, survived his terrible wrath. For many, many years now, despite a multiplicity of evil plans, Sonic the Hedgehog and all his cool, superpowered animal friends had thwarted him countless times. No matter how ingenious his plots were, no matter how many or how powerful robots he built to fight on his behalf, he would always be defeated,
matter what.
And it was starting to get extremely frustrating. It was in this state of near maddening rage and spite that Dr. Robotnik created what would soon become his most dangerous and deadly invention: a trans-dimensional snatcher, a device that would allow him to reach into other dimensions and pluck out dangerous beings that would become living weapons, tools in his arsenal to fight that blasted hedgehog and all the others. Little did he know, he was about to tangle with a creature far more dangerous than anything he could ever hope to be. His mouth twisted into a devious grin, Dr. Robotnik stood in front of the trans-dimensional snatcher with his finger poised over a big, red button. Yes, this would be the perfect plan. Sonic would never stop him now. He pressed the button and watched as the machine gave a mighty, almost blinding flash. As the resulting smoke cleared, Dr. Robotnik saw the creature he'd summoned, cowering on the platform before him. It was gray and emaciated, shivering and weeping, covering its face. Immediately, Dr. Robotnik's face fell. Was that it? Some weeping, stretched freak? He wanted something more exciting, like a giant killer lizard or monstrous zombie that melts everything it touches. What could possibly be the combat potential of this pathetic creature? In his frustration,
I think all you
Robotnik
guys know
kicked the
exactly what's
cowering
happening, and I
beast.
have no idea.
It would be the last mistake he'd ever made, because the creature in question was, as you'd probably guessed, SCP-096. And as any SCP Foundation enthusiast knows, there are two ways to activate 096's infamous rage state. One is looking at his face, and the other is attacking him. Dr. Robotnik had just made a literally fatal mistake. As the crying turned into wails of rage, 096 leaped onto him, freakishly stretching its bottom jaw into a yawning black chasm of a mouth. Nearby, Sonic the Hedgehog, who was,
Did Dr.
of course,
Robotnik just
gliding
get an
along at
8?
the speed of sound, heard Dr. Robotnik's horrific screaming. He immediately recognized the scream as that of his arch-enemy, and yet the scream was so blood-curdling that even he couldn't deny it made him concerned for his old foe. Thankfully, it didn't take the blue super speedster very long to investigate the source of Dr. Robotnik's death rattles. He ran at hypersonic speeds until he reached Dr. Robotnik's base, where an eerie silence had now fallen. Sonic felt a chill in the air. With uncharacteristic caution, he began creeping through the metal halls of Robotnik's lair. Soon enough, he started seeing blood on the walls. Blood, but no bodies. What had happened here? Soon
Why
after,
is Sonic the
found
basis
out.
for the story?
He walked into the room that
I
had once
don't
been the
know.
home to the trans-dimensional Snatcher, where the shy guy
Could've been an
sat
April
crouched in
Fool's
the middle
thing,
of
maybe.
an empty, bloody room, weeping. Something about all this was terribly wrong. Sonic could hear it. That's when one of his feet clanked against the metal floor, and the shy guy looked up to view him. Sonic almost felt the breath leave his body when he saw that
It's like a
monster's
Dark
horrible
Souls
face.
enemy.
He'd never seen anything like it before. That's when the thought crossed his mind. Had this monster murdered Dr. Robotnik? As though activated by the sudden intrusion, the shy guy gave a monstrous wail, then lunged towards Sonic. Luckily for Sonic,
Go.
his incredible speed came in handy
Gotta go
here,
fast.
darting out of the monster's clutches and whizzing out of the base. But despite his speed, the shy guy somehow still seemed to have an innate sense of Sonic's location. It began to bound after him, tearing its way through the walls of the base like tissue paper. It would slaughter the strange blue creature that had seen its face, destroy it, and leave nothing left. Meanwhile, Sonic was already speeding away. His greatest asset had always been his truly supernatural speed, but he couldn't run forever. And
Maybe
one
that's
look over his
why
shoulder
they're doing
revealed
this,
a distant
'cause
white
Sonic
dot
can run.
behind him. It couldn't be, could it? He was moving so fast that the normal eye couldn't perceive him. So how could any living being possibly even be that far behind him? This monster
So
really
it's like
is
it
built
follows,
different,
kind
huh?
of.
He said to himself. The shy guy was
Built
gaining
different,
speed
huh?
behind him. He couldn't even see Sonic, but he could sense his distant presence. The one who'd looked at him, the source of his rage. This strange little blue creature was certainly fast, but unlike Sonic, 096 was literally incapable of getting tired. The turtle always beat the hare in the end, and it would be the same here eventually. Sonic was smart enough to know that he probably couldn't beat something like this in a fight, especially if it had literally annihilated Dr. Robotnik. If he had any hope of beating this beast, he'd need to get some friends on his side before things went truly south. The person Sonic was looking for
Who the
here
fuck was that?
Tails, a flying two-tailed fox who was also one of Sonic's closest friends, who lived in the Green Hills zone. Tails, Tails! Sonic yelled at breakneck speed. What's wrong, Sonic? Tails asked, visibly concerned. No time to fully explain. There's something after me, some kind of monster, Sonic said. Get everyone you can. We're gonna need all the help we can get if we want to stop this thing. Before Tails could even get another word in, Sonic tore off again in the opposite direction. If this thing was following him, he didn't want to lead him straight to Tails, but the last thing Sonic was expecting was that the monster had somehow closed the distance, and now it was heading right for him. Sonic didn't even have time to course correct. A long, wiry arm shot outwards and whacked Sonic in the side of the head, sending him skidding across the grass. The shock of an enemy catching up to him like this rattled him even more than the pain of the hit, but there was no time to dwell. Sonic looked up from the ground and saw the shy guy barreling towards him, bellowing madly and digging its claws into the dirt. You just don't know when to give up, do you? Sonic said. Just before the shy guy's claws reached him, Sonic darted out of the way at the speed of light. Even then, the shy guy seemingly had an innate sense of his location. There was no way to trick or outrun the shy guy. It just
How's he gonna
kept
win?
running, no
Maybe
matter
he
what.
won't.
It was utterly relentless. If Sonic wanted to survive while Tails found reinforcements, he needed to fight back. Before the shy guy could lunge for him, Sonic lunged for the shy guy at impossible speeds, kicking the monster in the chest with both feet. The force
Got
of the
him.
kick, charged by super speed, sent Shy Guy rolling back across the dirt. Sonic hoped that this attack might incapacitate it, but no. The Shy Guy immediately rose to its hands and feet. It was
They gotta
ready
throw him in
to
a
go
volcano.
again. For the first time in quite some time, Sonic was afraid. Thankfully, this time, he wasn't alone. The Shy Guy prepared to lunge, but a spiked
fuck.
fist collided with the side of his face, laying the beast out temporarily. It was Knuckles the Echidna, a powerful pugilist who also acted as the guardian of the Master Emerald, the Chaos Emerald that controlled all of the other Chaos Emeralds. If Knuckles punched you, then you better believe you're gonna feel it. Tails called me. Is this ugly punk giving you trouble, Sonic? Knuckles asked, as the Shy Guy began getting back up, its semi-smashed face repairing itself. You have no idea, Sonic said. Sonic and Knuckles were now taking on the Shy Guy 2-on-1, making things a little more even, but they were still up against a ruthless, savage killer without
I hope
compare.
Goku appears.
Now, Knuckles had seen its face too. The Shy Guy leaped forward, trying to grab Knuckles with its grasping claws. Sonic darted in just in time and grabbed Knuckles out of the way. As the Shy Guy
It was
grasped at
not
the empty
animated
air,
at all.
Knuckles jumped in and gave the screaming monster another mighty punch. The sheer force of it left the creature wobbling on its feet, but it still wasn't enough. Lucky for Sonic and Knuckles, they were about to get some help from the big guns. Literally. Bullets suddenly perforated the Shy Guy's body, distracting the monster. It turned and saw yet another one of Sonic's allies, Shadow the Hedgehog, wielding a customized M16 assault rifle. He was wearing a devious smirk.
"Oh, Sonic," he said, "when will you learn that your actions have consequences?"
Having attacked the Shy Guy, Shadow the Hedgehog was added to his kill list. It seemed he was making a lot of new enemies today in this strange new place. But there was still one more ally left to come. Suddenly, the Shy Guy felt a presence behind him, as though someone had just teleported there. It was a purple creature, similar to Sonic, though far more extreme, named Cold Steel the Hedgehog. He was wielding a desert eagle in each hand.
Fuck.
"Nothing personnel, kid,"
Cold Steel chuckled. Before the Shy Guy could make another move, Cold Steel turned and
April Fool's
unloaded the
joke.
magazines of his 2 pistols into the Shy Guy, while Shadow provided suppressing fire with his M16. Meanwhile, Knuckles kept punching at the monster, and anytime the Shy Guy attempted to attack one of them, Sonic sped in and pulled them out of harm's way. They were a perfectly organized team, and soon enough, the Shy Guy was temporarily incapacitated. "Looks like he's down, but not for long," Sonic said. "It's time to finish this." That's when Tails descended, his arms filled with the last thing they needed to conclude their terrifying ordeal, the Chaos Emeralds. And with the help of Knuckles' Master Emerald, they could send this abomination back to wherever it came from and never worry about it again. With the power of the Chaos Emeralds, there was another almighty flash, just like the one that had brought the monster here.
Yeah, he found
When the
them all
smoke
so fast.
The monster was gone, returned to the place from whence it came. Sonic sighed and said, "Well, at least we don't have to deal with Dr. Robotnik anymore." Check out the Dr. Bob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like
Cold as fuck. No, this came out 3 months ago. So not an April Fool's joke. I don't know how I missed that one. I don't even know if he did anything for April Fool's. That might have been the gorilla video, actually, honestly. What else do we have here? What else we got? Not a Shy Guy. Yeah, Dr. Eggman just died so quick into that. It's kind of disappointing.
I live in Oregon in an area that has a lot of open areas like farms, lots, and just open fields. We also live about 6 miles from the nearest city. My parents own a lot of land, including our backyard, which is a well-kept area, and then it turns into a forest. Well, about 10 years ago in 2011, for about a week or so, I remember hearing weird stuff out in that forest. And one day my father said that he was grilling and he went inside. He went inside for maybe 3 minutes, but when he came back outside, the grill
Grilling,
was
son.
open and all of the meat was gone. He thought maybe it were raccoons. So again, he grilled another day and the same thing happens. After the second time, my father went to check the tapes, and what he saw was terrifying. It looked like something from a movie, like the movie Signs, the Alien movie. It was very skinny, with no hair on his body, with eyes that would not be considered human eyes. My dad was a jokester, so I was convinced that he was playing a joke on me. He told my uncle what was going on, who's a police officer. He called him over to the house, showed him the video, and asked what he could do. My uncle didn't take my father serious, just like me, because my father was always playing jokes on people. To shut my father up, he told him that he would look into it. They decided not to tell my mom because she would freak out. I've never seen my father be this serious before. I thought it was just great acting until I woke up out of nowhere that same night. I heard the same sounds I had been hearing before. My room was in the back of the house on our second floor and I always kept my window open. So I looked outside in the darkness of the forest and just stared for about a minute. At that point, it was time for me to investigate. I had to see what it was or who that was messing with me. I watched a lot of military and spy movies, so I decided to sneak up on whatever this was with my camera. I went outside, silently walking into the forest with my night vision.
So I decided to sneak up on
This is what I caught on camera.
I'm hearing the things in my woods again. I don't know if you can hear the noise. I'm recording with night vision right now. I've been hearing the sounds in the back of my woods.
Yeah, this voice is just like... I did a lot of growing up since then.
The heck is that? Oh my god!
Was that?
I know that's what I've been hearing, but I'm not sure what it was or what it was doing, honestly. I just know that I surprised it. I'm not one to say that this was something weird, but maybe it was an animal, but it didn't look like any animal that I've ever seen in this area.
Oh, look at that guy.
What do you think it was?
What do you think it was? What do you think? Was it?
A small bit of background that is relevant to the story before I start. I'm a father, and I was tragically put in a position to give my daughter up for adoption at 6 months old.
Audio sounds
The
like
family
not
that
as loud
adopted
as
her
the music.
keeps me in the loop, sending me videos and pictures of her. Keep that in mind as I tell this story. This takes place 4 years after. I was out deer hunting in northwest Alabama, about 50 miles from the Georgia border. My hunting trip started like any other, gathering supplies, packing up, and checking with all the necessary outlets, so if something goes wrong, I can get picked up. I left at about 5 a.m. I got to my destination around 4 p.m. to a hunting lease a buddy of mine had. I then began my trek to a tree blind. Once I got there, I set up my sleeping area and headed off into the woods to find wood for a rocket stove. I found the wood pretty quick. Then I made it back to camp for an evening of relaxation and peace. Before I called it a night, I was sitting around watching some videos of my daughter playing and talking until I got tired and decided to climb into the blind. This blind was about 12 feet in the air, mind you. I was gonna get some shut-eye. I ended up falling asleep rather quickly to the sound of the forest. I woke up in the middle of the night to dead silence. The entire forest was deathly quiet, as if it was waiting for something to happen. The night air was cool on my face as I sat up. Under any other circumstance, it would have been a nice night if I didn't know that a predator was around. While I sat there waiting for any noise to come through, it was as if the night had died. After about 5 minutes, I decided to ignore it and try to get some more sleep for the hunting tomorrow. It took about 30 minutes before I started to doze off again, when I heard something that shook me to my core. I heard my daughter's voice.
Shook me
At first, I thought I was
night
hallucinating,
long.
but about 30 seconds later, I heard it again. This time, it was close enough to understand what was said. "Daddy, where are you? I'm scared. Help me." It was unmistakably my daughter's voice, only it sounded all wrong, like it was a recording. I checked my phone, but it was turned off to conserve battery. It was a rather bright night, so I decided to peer out of the blind to see
it's
if
a
I
little
could
fucked
see
up.
anything. In my head, I wanted to see what was using my daughter's voice. She was 600 miles away from there. There would be no way she was out here with me.
Or was she?
This tree blind was set up in such a way to make it really hard to see at this time of night. It overlooks an area where trees were few. They were about 20 feet apart, so there was plenty of moonlight beaming through the branches and reaching the forest floor. At first, I saw nothing but empty woods, but with whatever was using my daughter's voice getting closer, it was only a matter of time. About 5 minutes passed, I heard it again. It seemed to be coming about 50 yards north. I turned my head to look in that direction, and I stopped. My breathing froze. What I saw in front of me was a 7 to 8 foot tall alabaster creature sniffing the air. It had no hair, and it appeared emaciated, like it hadn't fed in about a week.
It's kind of like the other
It had
guy
long,
from
lanky
Dr.
arms
Bob.
that ended in human-like hands. As it sniffed the surroundings, I felt as though if I even thought about making noise, it would find me, and I would never make it home. Watching it sniff the air for some time, I saw it walk about 100 feet. Then it said again, "Daddy, I'm scared. Help me." This time it sounded more hurried, like it knew I was somewhere around there. I refused to look away as I watched this thing walk off. After about 10 minutes, the sounds of the forest started up again.
Could just shoot it.
I let myself relax for a second. Once I did, my entire body ached. I must have been tensing up really hard for a long time. Needless to say, as first light came, I got out of there, and I refused to go back. I've told this story to native friends when I got home, and they think it's a Wendigo, but I'm not too sure.
Yeah, the style's cool.
All I know
Especially
is
for
I
like a
will never
spooky
be back
story.
in that area of woods ever again.
It's a little crusty, but suits it. It was actually his daughter. She mutated. You know, like some Resident Evil shit happened. It's just how it goes.
My name is Kai. When I was 17, me
What's
and
up,
my
man?
friends were hanging out one night and decided to watch a movie, making some popcorn. The movie was a hilarious thing. We had a good time laughing and eating popcorn and other snacks. When the movie was done, it was around 11:30 p.m. It
That's
already turned
hilarious.
to pitch black outside. One of my friends, we'll call him Spencer, suggested that it would be a good idea to play a game of Spotlight. Spotlight is basically hide and seek, but in the dark, and the seeker has a flashlight. Where I live, my house is in a cul-de-sac, and if you walk down a little path in the backyard, you end up at a long street. Across that street, there's a giant field that used to have a basketball court and a playground, but it's been torn down since I was 8. So now the giant field was just empty. But there were a lot of bushes and hiding spots, and even a little cornfield, which made it perfect for a game like Spotlight. So we grabbed a few flashlights and headed to the field. After playing a giant game of rock, paper, scissors, it was decided that another friend, we'll call him Braden, was going to be the seeker. So me and Spencer went to hide together in the cornfield, since it would be hard to find someone in there. While I believe 4 other friends, John, Ethan, Liam, and my brother Cameron, went to hide all separately in different places in the field. For some information that'll be needed later on in the story, Spencer was 17, John and Ethan were 16, Braden and Cameron and Liam were 14. Once me and Spencer got comfortable
Why
in
is
the
that info needed?
cornfields, we started just to talk about random stuff and about the movie we watched earlier. Just as I told Spencer a joke and he started laughing, I put my finger to my lips and told him to shut up because I could hear someone rummaging through the corn and stomping on leaves. We both just sat there thinking it was Braden and hoping that he would find us. I then realized that it sounded like multiple people. Then Spencer said, "Wait, isn't
Oh,
Braden Neal the
no.
seeker?" My heart dropped. I began getting scared but tried not to say anything. I could also see that Spencer was scared too, and I bet he was about to shit his pants. Just then, we heard the men speaking to each other, and they didn't sound like any of our friends. So it was confirmed that there were 2 other men in the cornfields with us. They were talking very quietly, but I could hear some words. Boys, snatch, just like that.
What?
I felt like time stopped. About a minute later, we heard them walk off. and I'm going to assume that they left the cornfield. But after the two men left, we heard someone yelling, "Get the fuck away from me! Help!" It sounded like Cameron. Me and Spencer immediately rushed out of the cornfields and went to find Cameron. Just then, everyone else came out of their hiding spots and went after the two men. Spencer and John were the tallest and most muscular, so they went in and beat the shit out of him.
Whoa.
John put one in a headlock and threw him to the ground. Then one man sprang at Spencer suddenly. Spencer screamed and took out his large pocket knife he always has with him, and then stabbed him 3 times.
Yo, what the fuck,
As they
Spencer?
proceeded to beat them, I went to Cameron, helped him to get up, and yelled for everyone to run. Spencer listened and shoved the guy to the ground, but John didn't listen and continued beating the man. After Spencer pulled John off the man, they both finally ran away. We went back to Spencer's house since it was the closest, and we told everything to his mom, and then she called the police. When the
Mom,
police
don't call the
arrived, we led them
cops.
down
He
to the
stabbed
field,
someone.
but of course, the men were gone. However, there was still some blood left on the path where Spencer stabbed one of the men, so the police took a sample of it. Once me and Cameron got home, he told me that the man Spencer attacked had a knife.
Yeah, but still, even if it was in defense, I'd be kind of mad.
I was feeling a little
Like,
uncomfortable.
Mom,
about
don't
what we'd
fucking
done
call the
for our
cops. You
self-protection
kidding
in the
me?
cornfield. But then I realized that was a good thing Spencer attacked the man with the knife, because if John tried to attack that man, he could have been stabbed to death as he had no weapon.
I don't know.
I'm just thankful none of my friends were hurt that evening. It could have ended much worse. After that, we never heard back from the police. So neither of the men was found.
Yeah, you would think the cops would be like, well, we're gonna have to take you in. You fucking stab somebody. Like, well, I don't know. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm